Hi, I'm Kieran Ongley. I'm MajorTim.space 2023 to 2024 Achievement Young Ambassador.
Hi, I'm Harvey Hall, the MajorTim.space 2023-2024 STEM for him Young Ambassador.
And today we're going to be interviewing Tim Gagnon, a NASA patch designer. Tim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you for the invitation. Pleasure to meet both of you, Kieran and Harvey. Actually, I'm not just a NASA patch designer. I don't work for NASA. I never have, but I do work with teams within NASA. And so I usually refer to myself as a space patch ambassador because it encompasses a wide range of other projects.
So, Tim, my first question for you is, where do you find your inspiration for your patch designs?
Oh, that's actually the easiest part. The space program is very generous in providing inspiration. All the missions, as you can imagine, that I have witnessed since the beginning of the space program, plus all the 30 years of shuttle operations, the 20 plus years of ISS operations. And then, of course, we have the exciting explorations of Mars with the rovers. So finding inspiration is the easy part.
My first question for you is, I have read that on your 16th birthday you were invited to go to NASA to watch the launch of Apollo 17. What was that experience like?
As you can imagine, it was incredible. I don't know if either of you have seen a launch in person, but you're standing 3.5 miles away from the launch pad, which is the closest safe distance. And you see the light as the engines ignite, and it turns night. Apollo 17 went up at night, so it immediately was like a sunrise. And the rocket slowly clears the launch tower, and you haven't heard anything yet because obviously light travels faster than sound. And then all of a sudden you get this rumbling that you can actually see the shock waves going across the water between you and the pad, and it almost punches you in the chest like you're getting hit with a bass drum. So it was pretty awesome.
Wow. So Tim, how do you ensure that your designs don't violate any copyright laws, or to protect your designs as well from being used or copied in part or full without permission?
Well, when I'm doing a patch for a NASA mission, I make sure to use either to draw something original or to use royalty-free clip art if I'm looking for a specific illustration or an icon or a symbol. And all of the NASA mission patches are in the public domain. So I don't own the artwork, NASA does. And the citizens of the world essentially own them. So I've seen designs on T-shirts in stores and so forth, and that's okay. I mean, I am satisfied knowing that something that I helped create with the crew and with my artist partner, Dr. Jorge Kartz, is going to be around for a very long, long time. So that aspect of it is not a concern. Now, when I'm doing something for a private organization, then I let the copyright get handled by their organization, maybe their staff lawyers or whatever.
What is your favourite patch that you have created and why?
Well, there are a lot of wonderful stories to go with each patch. So, and I always get this question. It's a natural question. I always say that my favorite patch is the next one. because you never know when you're going to get a commission or a request from some organization. And, each one can be exciting. And it's my favorite part is not just creating the artwork, but it's the collaboration with my points of contact with that organization, whether it be an astronaut crew or a nonprofit. It's learning what they want to illustrate and delivering that to them in a very small canvas.
So what? So obviously, there's a lot of jobs where you'll need different qualifications specific for your fields. What qualifications do you need to work in patch design?
Well, nowadays, you really should have an art degree. You should be very familiar with all the various computer assisted art tools like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, or a combination of all of those. And there are artists that are way more proficient than I am in those things. My benefit, having started back when we would create all the artwork by hand, is that my imagination has to work a little bit harder. So I can't just click on something in a computer program and just say, okay, make that what it has to be.
Yeah.
I actually have to draw with my mouse by hand, and that's okay, because to me it's fun. I was drawing ever since I could hold a pencil.
I absolutely love the painting you created in 2007, Fastest Prologue, which you created to show 50 years in the history of space exploration to raise funds for the Apollo program monument, the Space Walk of Fame Foundation. How long did it take for you to create such an amazing piece, and please could you tell us more about it?
Oh, thank you very much for the compliment. That was a fun project. I had actually donated for an event that the museum was holding. I would create a painting, and they auctioned off that to the client, and the client is the one that actually said, this is what I want you to create. Imagine all 50 years of space exploration and pack it in a painting. And I wasn't prepared at the time to create something that large and that involved. I mean, I think the painting is 24 inches high and 48 inches wide. So it became a lot larger than I imagined the painting I would donate would be. And then it's just imagine, okay, I'm familiar with the history of the space program since I was born in the middle of the last century. And so I remember the Life magazines. I remember watching the missions on TV when I was a boy. So I knew what I wanted to include, and it was just a matter of painting about that. The toughest part with that particular painting was getting all the rockets in the same scale. I wanted to show how large the Saturn V was and how tiny the little Mercury Redstone was in comparison, and then the space shuttle and so forth. And this was even done before the Artemis program. So if you look to the right side of that painting, what became the Space Launch System was done in black and white because it was still only on the planning stage. There was no hardware built when that painting was done. The fun part about that painting, and the thing I've always loved to paint, was the portraits along the bottom. And I couldn't do a complete portrait because I wanted to imagine their faces in the smoke from all of those rockets going across the history of exploration. And so I had to do almost like portrait sketches and paint them that way. And I think it turned out okay.
Wow, that's really fascinating. Um, do your children or grandchildren have they inherited any of your artistic abilities?
Well, I have two grandsons. One is a musician. He plays the cello in the school orchestra. And the other one, the youngest one, who's now 11, likes to draw. He's the artist of those two. And I tease him. I say, when you grow up, you could be the next KSC artist. And so if I was to hand over my art supplies to someone, I would love it if it was my grandson. But who knows what interests he'll have as he enters, middle school and high school and college, and where his life will take him. But he can always keep art as a hobby, something that he will enjoy just doing for himself.
Yeah.
Just like you inspire many people today, who inspired you when you were young?
I was very fortunate to have a lot of wonderful artists. Robert McCall. If you've ever seen the large murals in the Air and Space Museum, there is one. The main museum is on the mall in Washington, D.C., and you enter the front building, and immediately on your right is a 60-foot tall mural that he hand painted. And I'm not talking with big brushes and rollers, little tiny artist brushes. And the fact that he was able to get up on the scaffolding and get all that done, I could stand there all day and just stare at it. But so he was an incredible inspiration. Another fantastic artist was Paul Kelly. And if you've done any research on him, or if you do, he was the only artist that NASA allowed to have breakfast with the Apollo 11 crew before their mission in July of '69. And he had a notepad of sketch paper and a ballpoint pen, and he was just sketching the astronauts while they were eating and talking, and just sitting in the background, enjoying the what I call like being a fly on the wall, because he wasn't participating in the conversations. He was just an observer. And then he went into the suit up room where the astronauts got into their white spacesuits. And it was an incredible opportunity. And the neat thing is his son is an artist. And I know his son, Chris Kelly. And when they made the movie First Man with Ryan Gosling playing Neil Armstrong, Chris Kelly portrayed his father using the same sketch pad and the same pens in that scene in the movie. So I always thought that was pretty cool.
So Tim, I know that patches, space patches in particular, they weren't always allowed to be purchased or worn by the public, but were they always worn on flight suits or spacesuits?
On the American side, the first crew to actually request the permission to have a patch, and it was granted, and they wore it on their spacesuit, was Gordon Cooper and Pete Conrad of Gemini 5, and they flew in 1965. And for the longest time, the idea of a mission patch was referred to as a Cooper patch because he was the first one to get the actual permission granted. And it wasn't like it was really illegal for people to have the patches. They just weren't widely distributed. They were for the astronauts and their own personal use, the people that actually worked on the mission. And so you couldn't buy them in stores until around 1970.
Why did that change in 1970?
I think public demand. I think it just became, because the patches, especially the Apollo ones, were so beautiful that the public just kept requesting And so NASA gave permission to its official patch manufacturer, a company called AB Emblem in North Carolina, to actually make more patches and sell them to the general public and to museums and so forth. The first time I purchased from AB Emblem, I was in Scouts when I was a boy, and in the back of Boys Life magazine, there was an ad where you could buy space patches. And I saved up my allowance and my paper route money, and I bought a full set of the Gemini and Apollo patches that were available at the time. I think they were like $2 each, and they were beautiful. I mean, they were done so well.
The Challenger accident inspired you to create On the Shoulders of Giants, which is still on display in the Centre for Space Education. Please tell us a little more about this.
Well, that was done in time. It was just a spur of the moment inspiration. The Center for Space Education is the home of the Astronauts Memorial Foundation, and they were hosting an event on the 30th anniversary of the Apollo 1 accidents, and the families of the astronauts were there. And I felt the urge to create something that would honor their memory. And so I imagined how could I possibly do that? I mean, there were 6 landings and in different areas of the moon. There were actually 12 Apollo missions, including Apollo 1. And I always referred to Apollo 1 as an important mission because the lessons NASA learned after the accident, helped them build a safer and more robust spacecraft. I'm perfectly convinced that if Apollo 1 had flown its mission as it was planned to do, the failures of that spacecraft would have injured or killed a future crew. So their sacrifice actually made the Apollo program possible. And so in that painting, I wanted to have all of the astronauts that landed on the moon honor them in that way. And so I posed them in almost a half circle around the flag with the items that each crew had left on the moon in memory of fallen comrades. And then in the sky above, in space above the lunar surface, I have the missions in the Apollo program that did not land: Apollo 7, Apollo 9, Apollo 8, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 13, pass overhead and perform what the military calls the missing man formation. And that's when flyers fly information and one of them launches up away from the formation in tribute to their fallen comrades. And so that's how I had all of the astronauts that flew on Apollo honor the astronauts that perished in that accident. And it was very well received. It's still on display to this day, some 33 or so years later, 36 years later, or 26 years later, sorry. And I stop by to visit it every now and then.
Wow. So will you be working with any of the commercial spaceflight programs?
Actually, I don't know that will ever happen unless I happen to meet some of them personally and they request it, because both Boeing and SpaceX and all the commercial companies have their own graphic artists already on staff. So they don't need an outside artist to come in and do it. Would I? Oh, absolutely. I would love to see Elon Musk wearing a patch that I helped design. But, some dreams just may not happen. But even if that doesn't happen, I dreamed of designing patches since I was 16 years old. That dream has come true 19 times for space missions. So if I never get to design another patch, I really have nothing to be sad about. Uh, you know, I would love it before I retire from being an artist to have my artwork fly to the moon. So we'll see. You never know what
Yeah.
tomorrow will bring.
How long does it take to design each patch?
Well, that's actually entirely up to the crew. We have worked with a crew that liked almost like our second draft, and we polish it up a little bit after that with their feedback, and it was done. And honestly, as much as I enjoy looking at that patch, I'm sad that I didn't get to experience that collaboration over a very long time. I have another crew that were very diligent in in getting the feedback from everybody, and from the very first email when we started to the last email when they said, okay, this is the finished design and we were very happy with it, was 11 months. And so that was very enjoyable. They would take breaks because they would have training in various facilities around the world. So it might be 2 weeks in between times that I would hear from them. But they were happy with the patch. They've all been satisfied with the patch, and it's the experience of that collaboration that's the most fun part.
Um. So, what is the purpose of the patches? Like you said that the astronauts requested them,
Mhm.
um, and I know they're mostly space themes, but like, what do they represent? Why are they so important? The patches.
Well, to each crew, especially the people that fly for the first time on each mission, that person, the one that flies for the first time, is usually the person that they say, okay, you're going to coordinate getting the patches made, because they're excited. It's their first flight, and it's something that the person that has flown for the first time has done since Apollo 7 at least. And so they're excited. I'm delighted to work with them. And the patch itself is a symbol that represents what their mission goals are. And it is meant not only for the crew, but everyone who worked on that mission, whether they helped prepare the space shuttle payload for that flight, excuse me,
That's all right.
or they helped build the rocket for that flight. They get to have this symbol of something that they were a part of. So it becomes something that is desirable to own, because it's their way of saying, when you look at a patch, maybe on your wall or in a notebook or wherever you have them, that was something I helped make happen. And what is actually makes me very happy is my great 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 grandchildren, if they ever do a report in school on a specific mission that I helped design a patch for, they're going to see something that I helped create. So my artwork will live on long past me.
Yeah.
How many of your patches have flown in space?
19. 5 space shuttle mission patches and 14 space station patches. Now, I have done some artwork for other teams, and those teams may have had those patches fly as a favor to to that team, but generally I'm never aware of that. But 19 that I know of for sure.
So do flight directors have their own patches, or is it just the astronauts?
No, there are. It's a more recent tradition, but the flight directors In the days when I was a boy, I mean, they chose like white flight, black flight, gold flight, and it was their team color, and it was simple because there weren't very many flight directors back then. But now we're getting, and there have been more than 100 flight directors in the history of NASA. And so now they have names like Carbon Flight or Saber Flight or um, Redstone or Mosaic. And since I've known one of the astronauts I worked with on his mission patch, he flew on the ISS in 2009 to 2010. He became a flight director. And so he asked Jorge and I to help design an emblem that could be put up on the screen in mission control every time he's on shift. And that has caught on in more recent history. And now many flight directors like to have an emblem. And I've designed like 4 or 5 of them working with Jorge and that flight director. And but who knows how many requests we'll get in the future.
Yeah.
Are any of the patches you have worked on displayed on the ISS?
Actually, all of them. Every shuttle crew that flew to the ISS has a sticker of their mission patch, and they have a wall that it's just a panel that covers some hardware, and it's a nice big flat panel, and they all lined up their stickers on there. And if they brought up a specific module and added it to the ISS, they would also put their sticker in the entrance to that module, and then they would sign around it. So all of the ISS crews also put their mission patch on the ISS. Usually, if you look at the big doorways from one module to the next, of course, you're waitlist, so you can do it on the face of the doorway or on the underside of the entrance. And so all those doorways have stickers. Now we're about to have Expedition 70. So sometime this year or into next, when they are well into their mission, they will add their sticker somewhere on the ISS as well. But yes, all 14 of the ISS patches and all 5 of the space shuttle patches are on the ISS. And a lot of artists will have gallery showings where they do a painting and they hang it in a gallery and then they invite people to come see it. I like to say that my gallery is orbiting the Earth. So someday when the ISS is no longer there, it'll be kind of bittersweet, but it's been an amazing ride.
So are space patches generally public domain?
Yes, because NASA is a government agency. They hold the copyright to that artwork, but they are required by their charter to disseminate all that stuff to the general public because the taxpayers make that entity possible. So that's why you see NASA patches on T-shirts and around stores, and you'll see sometimes a mission patch. Usually the mission patches are a little bit more time sensitive. They're very popular on T-shirts or wherever during the mission or when the mission is launching. But then, they kind of slide into the background because there's a new mission and, a new launch and so forth. So that's why you don't see as many mission patches on T-shirts, say 5-10 years after that mission happened, unless it's something like Apollo 11 or Apollo 13, which are iconic.
Harvey, would you like to ask your question?
Oh yeah. Where can viewers purchase your patch designs, and are they all available to purchase?
Generally, most science museums across the world offer space patches. Many of them will offer patches if, for say, there was, like in France, if there was a mission with a French astronaut, they will offer those mission patches. But every patch is available to purchase.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm going to go there after this interview. In your own opinion, what do you feel was your greatest achievement in your career so far?
Well, artistic achievement, that's difficult. When I was younger, and I was still writing to astronauts, and they were very kind in their response, and they said, we've already chosen an artist. And many times when I was a young man, that artist was Robert McCall. He designed a number of beautiful, absolutely beautiful space patches. And in those times, he hand painted every one of those. So it was even more impressive in the way they look of his creations. Well, when the STS-133 crew was chosen and announced, they were going to be the last shuttle mission. STS-134 and STS-135 were not manifested yet. They were added later on that year. And so the STS-133 crew asked Robert McCall to design their patch because he had designed the very first shuttle mission patch. So it made perfect sense to have him bookend the shuttle program by doing both the first and the last patch. Well, he did two beautiful watercolor sketches, I want to call it, and he sent them off to the crew. He shipped them overnight mail, and the day after he posted them, he passed away. He was 90 years old. And so the crew had learned of his passing before they even received the package. And then they opened up the package, and they're beautiful, but it kind of makes me smile that Robert McCall had misspelled an astronaut's name. I mean, I do that all the time. And so I double, triple check now before I send any patch artwork to crews to make sure I got the names correct. And there were some other details that they wanted to have changed. Well, that crew, I had worked with one of them previously, and they had a crew meeting, and they said, and so Jorge and I finished that mission patch that Robert McCall had started. I never say I designed it because we just made those last final changes that the crew needed to get the patch finished. And so I would say having the astronauts trust that we would honor that previous work is a very impressive accomplishment to me, that they trusted us.
What would you want to go to space? I mean,
I would love to go to space, but unfortunately, I would never pass the flight physical. I had a massive heart attack 10 years ago, and so I'm doing well now. The intervention was obviously successful, and the medicines are keeping me in good shape, and my heart is doing well. But no agency, no commercial company would ever want me to be on their spacecraft because they'd be worried about me. I mean, back when I was a kid, Deke Slayton had a heart murmur, and he was denied the chance to fly. He was chosen in 1959. He was supposed to fly in 1962, and he never flew until 1975 when they understood his condition a whole lot more. So, but people who have had heart attacks like that would never get on a spaceship. So I can say I would love to fly, but I am satisfied knowing that my artwork goes where I won't.
So what if you do? What are your hobbies other than art? So I mean, art's not really a hobby; it's your career. But like,
Well, no, it's still a hobby too. I mean, I've done drawings and paintings of family members and things like that. So it was just, my grandfather, my father's father, worked in a paper mill when I was a boy. And when my grandparents would come to visit, he would bring me a ream of paper that he helped make. And we would use it for, I would draw on it and we would use it to do homework and work out math problems and practice our writing and so forth. But so it was just my nature that ever since I could hold a pencil, I wanted to draw something.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I still draw, I still paint, and it's very fulfilling.
Judy Resnick once sent you a package with a handwritten note saying you can do anything you want if you get a good education. What would your words of wisdom be for me and the other MajorTim.space ambassadors?
Well, yes, that was she answered a request I had for my niece and my daughter, and it was very kind of her to do so. She wrote it on January 18th, 1986, and she was killed 10 days later. So we were very stunned that she took the time to answer a request like that so close to launch time when there are other things to be concerned about. But I actually share the same words that Robert McCall sent me in 1982. And that is to achieve success, evaluate your talents realistically, set your goals realistically and honestly, work tirelessly at your art and love every minute of the work, study the great art of the past, come back from inevitable failure with courage, work relentlessly. So when I am asked what advice I would give to young artists, I tell them those words, I share those words with them, but I also say, never give up on your dreams. I started writing to astronauts in 1973, and I didn't succeed until 31 years later, in 2004. And there were some pretty, some pretty down days over those 31 years where I thought this would never happen. But I kept at it. I kept trying to get better. And so the world will tell you no. The world will, put obstacles in your way. And you just keep working at it. Perseverance is everything. Learn everything you can about what your passion is, what your goal is in life. And, work hard at it so you're the best one. And someday you're going to be in the right place at the right time, and you're going to get that job, and all that work will be worth it. And you'll forget how hard it was in the past because you're doing it. So never give up on yourself. If I can do what I've done, you guys can do anything.
So Tim, what is the youngest age that people can get started in space patch design?
You could start now. Draw things. Imagine a mission. What is that mission about? Are we flying to Mars? Are we building a moon base? And try to come up with a mission patch that illustrates that. Now, the average mission patch is 4 inches in diameter. So I would not start with anything more than twice that size, because you can mistakenly convince yourself that you have more area available to work in. The
Yeah.
most common thing that students need to remember that in that 4-inch patch, because of the requirements for embroidery, the letters have to be a 1/4 inch high. So, you can't make little tiny letters around the border of the patch because they're not large enough. So draw something and then make a copy of it at 4 inches, whether it's you're scanning it and you're putting it on the computer or however you're doing it. But imagine you're designing a mission and then keep a record of all those sketches. Because someday you may have the opportunity to show all that work to an astronaut. And they will see that you have this passion. They will see that you're serious about it because you have this whole sketchbook available to look at, or you're going to scan them and email them. And then, sooner or later, they're going to say, yeah, we'll give you a chance and you'll get a chance to work with them. And like the very first crew that said, we'll give you a chance, they did not wear a patch that I designed, but I learned an awful lot in the process. And 3 of those astronauts I worked with on their next mission. So apparently I showed them something that they liked, and it wasn't just quite right that time, but it worked for the next time. So if you have a passion to draw and to create art, start right now. But don't do like I did. Don't quit college. Go to art school, get your degree, learn everything about the new computerized tools that are very helpful in graphic design, and become the best graphic designer that you possibly can.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for this incredible interview. It has been an honor.
Well, thank you very much, Kieran and Harvey. I very much appreciate the opportunity, and I enjoyed talking with you both very much.
Thank you.
Us too. Thank you. Bye.
Be well.
Bye.